And welcome to the Truckee Meadows Water Authority Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024 at 10:15. We are calling the meeting to order. And the first item of business is our roll call, please.
Anderson?
Here.
Andriola?
Present.
Dare?
Here.
Dewar?
Here.
Hill is absent. Reese is not here. Alternate Ebert? Not here. Zimmerman?
Here.
Caviglia?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, we will open up public comment. And clerk, is there any public comment registered?
There is, and it's Mr. John Rouse. Mr. Rouse, if you'd like to come up, let me read a disclaimer.
Can I go back?
Okay.
Good
Public
morning.
comment.
Go ahead.
Sorry, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. No action may be taken on a matter raised under public comment that is not included on the agenda. The chair may prohibit comment if the content of the comments is a topic that is not relevant to or within the authority of TMWA, or if the content is willfully disruptive of the meeting by being slanderous, offensive, inflammatory, or amounting to personal attacks or interfering with the rights of the board of directors, TMWA staff, or meeting participants. Any person making willfully disruptive remarks may be removed from the room and barred from attending the remainder of the meeting. Ms. Chair, thank you.
Oh, okay, Mr. Rouse, please go ahead.
I will start.
Thank you. When I worked at TMWA, I noticed a lot of people retiring without recognition. And this is very saddening to me. Many of these individuals had over 40 years of service with TMWA, and not one noticed, no one knew they were gone. Someone seemed to not care about the retirees or how they left. However, when an attorney left TMWA and got work elsewhere, we saw a full page in the newsletter about the loss of her and how bad TMWA would be for her. That's like a slap in the face for employees. It seemed like the management only cared about high-profile employees and didn't recognize the people that actually did the work. When we started here at TMWA a while back, with new leadership, we were told we were gonna have a monthly meeting, breakfast meeting, and hands-on meeting. You could bring up whatever you want and have input. It raised a concern about our fleet. Our fleet is going down. Some of the vehicles are so old. When I had my vehicle, I had a hard time getting into the job without it breaking down. And how embarrassing it is to stand in front of a water leak and have not the tools you need to fix the water leak. After we brought this up to this meeting, we never had one of these meetings again. It was never told, nothing ever happened. TMWA has a problem with doing this. They have vehicles right now. You could go behind the warehouse. They have vehicles lined up that they purchased, but they can't outfit because they don't have the means to do it. Some of these vehicles are very close to being out of warranty, which is gonna cost ratepayers more money because these vehicles were neglected and weren't outfitted right. Meanwhile, TMWA's been spending millions of dollars in security, all kinds of security, people watching server, cameras everywhere, all this other stuff, not focusing on what we do. We do water leaks, we fix leaks, we repair leaks. I've heard of mechanics not having the right tools. It's all over that we don't have the right equipment. We built Mount Rose water treatment plant, cost millions of dollars. A lot of you guys approved this Mount Rose treatment plant. When you guys came and toured the Mount Rose treatment plant, I'm pretty sure you didn't know it still wasn't working right. And to this day, I believe it still hasn't worked right. Now, we proposed this other thing. All of a sudden we decided we're gonna build a brand new water treatment plant instead, okay? Instead of taking water from the thing, we're gonna take water from the sewer effluent plant, okay? We're gonna build this plant, sorry.
Want to wrap up, Mr. Rouse?
We're gonna build this plant and the water is gonna come from the effluent and we're gonna treat it, and we're gonna give it to the people in the North Valleys. Okay, the technology, the reason why we're doing this is because the sewer plant that's out there right now is producing so much water and overdevelopment in North Valleys. And they have no place to put the water, and they have the issue with the Lemon Valley Lake being filled up and flooded because all the land is gone. They built houses on it where the water used to go, and now we're gonna build this plant so we can take care of the effluent water out of that sewer plant and feed it to the people in the North Valleys. Why aren't we doing this down south?
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. Thank you very much for your comments, and I'm taking to heart the point you made about retirements. We had the same issue at City of Reno. And I think it's probably endemic. We have large staffs, and I really do think you make a good point about the recognition. So thank you for being here, and we'll
I
look into
even,
this.
I even had one, if you mind, I called the person one time and I
I think
asked
we
them,
need to stop. The public comment is 3 minutes.
Yeah,
she
I
asked me a question.
Yeah.
It just take me a second?
Yes. Well, I'll talk to you afterwards, and
I have to go.
but thank you so
But
much for being
I
here.
called somebody and they were retired and I didn't even know it, trying to get advice from them.
I've been through the same thing, Mr. Rouse, so I appreciate
Okay,
the thought
thank
and the
you.
comments. Thank you so much. All right, did we have another public comment?
No, and this is all staff, so we have nobody.
Nobody else? Okay, all right. Well, we'll close out public comment and we'll go to possible board comments or acknowledgements, and I have one, and others may too. For several months, we've had an issue with a water flooding leakage issue out Sparks. And I just wanted to commend our staff. They stayed on this problem. And they actually found the source of the leak, which was in the TMWA pipeline, which, you know, for months had not been obvious. But they kept working at it. And I have to say the highest acknowledgements, and they really went above and beyond in some ways in my mind to work hard to find the answer. And it was a complicated question and a complicated answer. And there were some confounding issues. So there was thoughts that maybe it was leakage in a Sparks facility, it was leakage here, it was leakage there, but they actually narrowed down the primary point of leakage to a TMWA connection with a house. And you know, to my knowledge, the problem's been virtually solved, and I thank you and your staff, Mr. Zimmerman, for following through. Well, is there anyone you'd like to call out here? Yeah, I see him hiding. He's like, actually, this is why I didn't say his name. He is in the last row hiding.
Shannon Giolito, she's not present, but she was the main one that focused on it. Nate Allen, Bill Howe, Andy was involved,
Yeah.
Marcy, it was
So this was all hands on.
hundreds of hours.
But if we had not found it, we had residents installing $10,000 of equipment per home to deal with flooding on their property. That was, you know, basically coming from one of our connections. So anyway, all of you that are here and those that aren't here, I thank you because it was a full team effort. So any other acknowledgements from anyone? All right, seeing none. What, did you have one?
I said just good job.
Oh, yeah, and thank you for being involved, Mr. Dare. I mean, you and I met over this issue since it was Sparks as well. So we'll close out item 4, move on to item 5, which is approval of the agenda, and I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Anderson, second from Mr. Dare. Any comments on the agenda or the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. And we'll move on to item 6, which is approval of the minutes of September 18th, 2024. And I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
All right, Ms. Andriola.
Second.
And second from Mr. Anderson. Any comments or changes to the minutes? I haven't heard any. All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. And we're on to item 7, discussion and action regarding general manager performance review for contract year 2023 to 2024. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you very much. Good morning. For the record, Jessica Atkinson. Before I turn it over to you to review Mr. Zimmerman's performance, I just wanted to go through the attachments that are included with the staff report on this agenda item. The first attachment is the general manager's report of accomplishments related to the goals set by the board last year. This was also presented during last month's meeting, which just included it for informational purposes. Attachment 2 is the actual feedback survey that went out via SurveyMonkey that everybody had a chance to participate in. This was sent to all board members and Mr. Zimmerman's 8 division department heads. The responses for all submissions are summarized, the first 2 pages, and then the full report follows that. And then attachment 3, just for reference purposes, is Mr. Zimmerman's employment agreements. Just a couple reminders on that, the contract states that each July 1st, starting in 2023, until he reaches the market step of his position, Mr. Zimmerman is eligible to receive the step increase and the general wage increase that MPAT employees receive. This is consistent with what happened this year, July 1st. His base salary was adjusted from $245,923 annually to $268,237 annually. That equated for a 4.95% increase, and that's attributed to the step movement within his wage band. And then he received a 3.92% increase, which is consistent with the general wage increase that was provided to all TMWA MPAT employees. So that's kind of the rundown of what you have in front of you. At this point, unless you have any questions, I'll turn it over to you to do the formal
Okay,
evaluation.
thank you. Well, I'll just kick us off. I found there was a pretty remarkable consistency in the review with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. And myself, I don't mind saying I ranked John extremely high. I think he's doing an outstanding job. I wanted to compliment you, Ms. Atkinson, on the way that you laid this out. It's very easy to read. I don't recall that we've had the bars before. Maybe we have, but I just don't recall it. But it gives you a snapshot that if you look at page 1 of 9, so it's the sort of the second part of the attachment, you can see at a glance where we all agreed. I mean, and this is not just the board members, but you also have external reviewers. And then where maybe there's some split, but it never went below meets satisfaction. And that's as it should be, because I don't think we would want to employ a director that was below meet satisfaction. But in fact, most of the areas that you quizzed us on, the majority were in the exceeds expectations. So it was a very, very complimentary review, and it really reflects your performance. Mr. Zimmerman, I know that when you presented the month before, your extensive and your staff's extensive accomplishments, I think I was kind of blown away. And I don't know how others felt, but I was as impressed as the previous year, and you've really come into your own. I mean, most new managers have to go through a whole yearly cycle before they really feel like they've got their feet on the ground and they know everything that's going on, or are prepared for the next annual cycle with budgeting and all the things that happen at different points of the year. And so my kudos to you. It's not just me, but you can see the results in black, white, green, and blue. And the green really speaks highly. And the only area that was sort of divided was on relations with board governance. And even then, the majority was exceeds. So I only have one question for you. The total compensation package it sounded like 8% if I added everything together. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was just under 10%. So Mr. Zimmerman's contract caps any total wage adjustment and lump sum at 10%, and so he was just under 10% with his step and then the general wage.
And then we did not have a separate conversation, which I usually expect, but are you expecting us to make that determination today too on a compensation?
That would be up to the board if the board has discretion to do that.
Okay.
Again, it's constrained by that 10% cap. I do have those numbers. If in discussion the board wanted to know what those numbers would be, I have those available. Okay.
Well, on all the other boards I serve on, usually I have a discussion with the person in your role and the person in our attorney's role, who sometimes actually run the review process, but in anticipation, and I usually make a recommendation. And I will just share, we haven't had that conversation. I'm not really, everyone else may be prepared, and that's great. I'm just not prepared with numbers today or a recommended raise on top of a merit, that more like a COLA, or is there a COLA for this year?
Yeah, there was a COLA. So the first piece was the step increase, and then the second piece, I refer to it as a general wage increase, but that really is the COLA that all of our employees receive.
And does the step increase apply to the general manager?
It does, it's written into the contract until he reached, so we have a wage band, and within the band, there's steps. And so his employment agreement states that each July 1st, he will move up a step. And so that was the first part of the raise, just under 5%. And then on top of that is the general wage increase until he reaches the top step of his band.
Okay, well, I just want to get all that information out on the table. I'd like to divide this conversation in two. First, I'd like to talk about the performance and then circle back to any kind of wage increase, whether we do it at this board meeting or my preference would be when we have more of us here.
Okay.
I mean, we have 4 of us for the quorum, but we're missing several key members. I'd love to have them participate in the conversation. And I'd like to also be prepared to give you all a recommendation from my perspective. But if the decision is to move forward today, we can do that too. So let's talk about performance. Mr. Dare.
Yes, obviously looking at this, John has exceeded and done very, very, very well. I think for me, the largest thing that I have seen is his ability to bring teamwork to the table amongst his staff. And that was a big concern of kind of almost after COVID, some of the feelings we saw, some of the things that were going on. And I think he has brought, from what I've seen, has really helped pull people together. And I say that, I don't think we had as many issues as people sometimes felt or in some conversation on our board, but feelings, the little bit that was there could have went either direction. And I know your staff, and I've met with your staff here and there, and I know they support you, and I think that's huge. I mean, obviously, when it comes to some of the work we need, we've shown that you've excelled or met expectation. But I think if there was another box to mark that I could say you exceeded, is in that area of bringing on staff, working with your staff, and that's something we have no say in. I mean, that's all you. I mean, we get to help with the budgeting, we get to help process some policies, stuff like that, but that leadership quality, and trust me, when that's not there, we're in big trouble. And so I thank you for bringing that to the table, obviously. And I would like to say, I think our board did speak right here. I mean, whether they're here or not, I just want to say, I mean, I wish they'd all come to the board meetings. I don't know whether they're not here, but they did speak in this. So if there is a decision to be made on anything, I think we can make it because, well, they spoke, and it's not our problem they didn't come.
Well, both the board and there was at least, 5 or 10 other people that.
There was sent to 8 of Mr. Zimmerman's direct reports.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my point is if they had something negative to say, it would show up on here.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my point. So the fact they didn't come, this shouldn't slow down our conversation.
Okay,
That's
good.
my opinion.
All right, Mr. Anderson, anything?
Actually, just want to say, John, you've been doing a phenomenal job for this organization. And yes, it's the team. It's all of these folks over here that are making you shine. But it also takes someone at the top to bring about the vision, the encouragement, getting folks to want to be a part of that team. So well done. Really don't have anything to go into detail. You got to see a lot of our comments, and I read through some of them like, man, that actually, I wish I would have said that too. But truly, I could not think of one area. Yes, I want you to continue to improve, continue to shine, but I think you're going to do it because you're surrounded by some phenomenal employees. And with that being said, just continue the good work.
Thank you.
So I too, I'm gonna echo what's already been said, so I don't necessarily want to be duplicative, but not diminish the fact that really I too looked at some of those comments and said, darn, I wish I would have wrote that. Because I think it profoundly spoke about the consensus of you doing a great job. I think leadership really is about surrounding yourself with really, really smart people and then getting out of the way. And I think sometimes when you are, especially in a quasi kind of government agency, we forget that. And I think you exemplify really a free enterprise, free market, where your literally expectation is no different than the smartest person that's responding to you. and taking that with, where the direction of where TMWA has not only been, but where it's going. Talking to folks that are in different positions throughout the state have shared with me, and I know I've shared this with you, but I'm gonna share it with everyone. When TMWA goes to the legislature, everyone listens. So if you remember that E.F. Hutton one, when TMWA walks in the room, everyone listens. And I think that that's exemplifies again the talent that is within the organization, and you recognizing that talent and bringing out the best in those folks in order to serve the customers that we all want the highest customer service. So I also just want to add, I think your accessibility is just to be commended. I'm surprised you haven't changed your cell number, but I really do appreciate it. And many of the folks as well that are here, everyone is really about being accessible, giving facts, giving information, and that's to be commended as well. I would like to echo the second part, Madam Chair, of your desire. I do think that, I think Mr. Dare brings up a point that's valid, that everyone's here, we have had this, we were prepared, we have looked at all of the more green than blue, and no red. And I don't know what the color is for below, so I'm just guessing it's red. But the point is that I also did not see in any of the materials what you had brought up.
Right.
And that is that what are those parameters? So I will leave it up to the board discussion on if we're wanting to look at that, and if we could take that into consideration. I think we are here, we are prepared, and I'm hoping that we can get that information, whether it be today or whether it be for a future meeting. I think it's helpful.
So, thank you, board. Those are great comments, and I want to encourage you, Mr. Zimmerman, to read every sentence, because the sentences really illuminate what these sort of broad categories mean to those individual reviewers. And I think they put their heart into the specifics. And I think if you read them, it'll both be empowering and guiding, for the future. The only thing I saw for a sort of development plan, everybody seemed to say the same thing. Continue, we have continue management training, continue building a strong team, continue development of emerging leaders, continue being the voice for our region, continue to challenge staff, keep growing. And I think that's what it's all about in these kind of positions. You are nowhere near stagnating in this position, you're on a huge growth, And so I want you to take those into consideration too, sort of a development plan of the things that are going well in areas that it says, for example, continue management training, your background's an attorney. This is in some regards a new field, but one that you're not foreign to you. But I think you should avail yourself of every opportunity to take some time for you to grow as a manager yourself. In terms of the salary, I'm a very honest person, and I don't know the parameters, and I would usually I work with the vice chair on all the boards that I'm on to consult with our HR director, learn what the parameters are to come to a recommendation, and I don't have that today. So it would be my strong preference to, regardless of the other members who are not present, I'd like to do that process if we could, and it would be retroactive to the day, whatever the day of the contract, the next period, and when would that be?
July 1st is when his.
So it'd be retroactive to July 1? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and then did you want me to share with you now the amounts with what we're talking about?
Sure, you can share. I'm just telling you where I am, and I know we only have 4, and so my perspective is I'd like to wait to the next meeting to give a actual official number, recommendation to the board, but go ahead.
So the
we're all
annual,
prepared.
yeah, sure. The annual dollar amount that would bring to the 10% cap is $2,278, or the percent would be 0.849% is the amount that we're talking about.
So,
Please, Mr. Derrick.
so that's part of why I don't think waiting is that we only have a very small amount that we can increase this. And so if it was larger, I would 100% agree. But it's not like we're gonna get 0.3 instead of 0.8 because we talked about it. And I guess we can, huh?
0.0.
0.08, I'm sorry, 0.08. So, and if our response here wasn't what it was, then I would also agree to wait. And so, I would say, and I can make a motion to approve, and if it doesn't pass, and again, this is no disrespect to what you're saying.
Appreciate it.
If it was larger, if we're talking, because we obviously are looking at our finances and budgeting. But I do believe how we respond to John trickles down to how he treats staff and understands that we care for him. And I know you do, you just said very kind things. But if it was not the small amount of, we're talking about a very small margin, though every dollar counts, every penny counts. I think without question, what we've seen here merits him going to the 10%. And so that would be my motion that I put on the table. Again, if it is agreed that you guys wanna wait, that's fine. I will put on the record, and I don't mind. I do think people should show up for our meetings. So to me, I mean, I get it, we all have busyness and stuff, but we signed up to be part of the board.
Sure, thank you. And let me get some clarification, Ms. Atkinson, could you say again the numbers?
So the annual amount that would bring him to 10% is $2,278, which equates to 0.849%.
Okay, all right, and then any other comments on this before we get a motion?
I would concur. I didn't know what the number was, and so that is the annual amount, right?
Yes.
2270.
Most.
Any other comments? Okay, you wanted to make a motion, Mr. Deere?
I think I get, I'll say it again. I make a motion that we bring it to the 10% and say, use that as our way today to say, good job.
Okay, was there a second on
I'll
that?
second that.
Okay, all right. Ms. Andriola, any more comments? I will just share, and no disrespect, I just, I'm only chair of TMWA for a little time. And I would like to have a fuller understanding of not only Mr. Zimmerman's numbers and amounts, but the next level of senior manager and how those things all relate. That's education. I just haven't had the opportunity, and I should have reached out potentially before this, but that's where we are today. So I'm not gonna support the motion today, but I could very easily come back with identical motion next month, but that's where we are. So we've had a motion. Mr. Dare, second from Ms. Andriola, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I'm gonna vote no for today. But it is no reflection on you, it's really a timing and process issue for me as chair. So with that, the motion fails. But we will, if you could agendize this for
The motion
No,
passed.
the motion-
3 of 7, don't we have?
Three to.
It has to do with who's here.
It's who's present in the
Who's
at the
present.
meeting and not those that.
It's
are-
not very
It's not the
different than, so we don't maintain our quorum?
Well, we've got the quorum.
No, what I'm saying is, in our bylaws or any other controlling documents, it doesn't require that it be a majority of the whole board?
It's a majority of those that are in attendance of the meeting
Okay, so
for the
if,
TMWA bylaws.
okay, well then the motion passes. And I am still gonna request that meeting with you, if I may. I still want the information regardless. And congratulations, Mr. Zimmerman. I'm giving you a handshake. Congratulations on a job really well done. Like I said, I could have easily come back with the same motion. I just, prerogative of the chair, I wanted that opportunity. So congratulations again, and thank you, board.
May I have a follow-up comment?
Yes, please.
If I may, Madam Chair. When you have that follow-up meeting, I'd like the opportunity to learn as well, so I
figured.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if there might be an opportunity, I don't know what the legal parameters are in terms of even looking at, is there additional bonus opportunities? But we can save that discussion to understand that, but I do want to put that out on the table because $2,278, and I'm not suggesting that's unfair, but it was surprising. I didn't know what the number was, which is why I made the earlier comment. So maybe we could add that to the discussion. I just don't want to forget. Sometimes if I say it, that helps me not forget.
Well, this is exactly where I was going. I wasn't gonna bring it up at this meeting because we weren't exactly agendized for that, but this is a question I was gonna ask because at every board that I sit on, and including as chair, vice chair, or regular member, we often have had the conversation about a bonus versus a percent raise, and these were all the things I was gonna delve into before we make the motion, but I'm fine with it. We can potentially do it in 2 steps.
So I only say this because we've done this before. My understanding, there's no room beyond 10%.
It's written in the
It's in the
contract, it's
contract,
capped at
Yeah.
10%, so
That's, I know that answer. So with that said, that's part of why there is no room.
Right, but there is, Madam Chair, if I
Please.
may, but there is in any contract the ability to open that up possibly, and that's all I wanted to understand. So I'm not suggesting that's an agendized item right now to
Gotcha.
discuss. I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to discuss it. And then have the full board weigh in if there is a window of that opportunity. That's what I've asked. I read the contract as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
I had the same question. You've had the benefit of being chair for a number of years, Mr. Dare, and so you've been through this a few times as chair. This is my first time. So, it's just, we're coming from a different place of education and learning. I knew too that the contract had its limits, but I'm like her, there's always room for amendment and discussion. So there we are. Well, anyway, congratulations. We're moving forward. You've got a full plate. You've laid out, I think, some goals, in addition. And let me ask, at what point would it be at our strategic planning retreat that we would revisit those? I mean, we had one of
That's
those.
The next agenda.
Okay, good. Okay,
I just want to say something real quick.
yeah, please.
I just want to thank staff. I mean, I think Member Anderson said a few times, and it's absolutely correct that, staff is what makes the Tumble Board and myself, succeed. And they're critical to this operation. And we're continuing to bring in new staff members every day, continue to have retirements and succession planning. So we'll continue to work at that and strive to get better. I have read all the comments that were in the evaluation, and I appreciate it. Like everyone at Tumble, we want to try to strive to get better and not let, our teammate down. So continue to. But it's really a lot on staff.
Really good.
Thank you.
Really well said. All right, so we'll close out item 7, and we're gonna move on to 8, which is about the future, the performance objectives. And let me ask, because we did have some strategic planning before, but when is the next one? So that we can think about the budget too, as we're looking at your objectives.
Sure. So this year's a little bit different because we have the water resource plan update. And so in August, we had our strategic meeting on just focused on the water resource plan. Today is the annual strategic planning meeting, setting out the goals for the GM, reviewing TMWA goals, organizational wide, and then reviewing TMWA goals for next fiscal year. And then the budgeting and all that will come into, you had the funding plan last month, and the budget will come back in February of next year.
Okay, really good. All right, well, take it away on item 8.
Okay. So just real quick, we're running about 30 minutes behind. I know a few board members have to leave at noon, so I'll be fairly quick. A lot of these goals are, nearly all of them are repetitive of the past. The one new goal is the water resource plan update, so that'll take a huge effort from Nate Allen and his team in the Natural Resource Department, along with a lot of other folks. On the general objectives, Matt Bowman and his team continues to look at ways to save money, more cash optimization potentially. Obviously, with community presence, we continue to be out there in the community, giving tours, talks, all kinds of public meetings just to get the word out about TMWA, because we have a good story to tell. And then also with process improvement, again, I have like the paperless billing initiative that Marcy Westlake has really pushed and marketed, and that continues to save TMWA a lot of money every year. And so we'll continue to ramp that up. We're also working on our hydroelectric, making sure those are running as much as possible, optimizing them. One goal I wanted to highlight is it deals with specific objectives on page 2, number 3. That's the board adopted this goal probably 6 or 7 years ago about when fringe area development is operated by a private utility or a smaller utility. What does TMWA do? And this goal basically says we look at it, we analyze, work with the smaller system in the community to figure out what the best options are and try to leverage our resources to help them. So 2 of those smaller developments, one is Verdide Meadows Utility Company. That is, they serve water to a small subdivision called the River Oak subdivision in Verdide. And so Alexis Hill has been communicating with that community for several years. Remember, Chair Doer and Alexis Hill and I went out and talked to the HOA board and the community a couple months ago, just to get their input, but we continue to monitor that and review it and just try to leverage, again, our experience to try to help them. And then also Sky Ranch, John Edel has been in contact with Great Basin Water Utility, that's who operates the Sky Ranch in Spanish Springs. That's a larger, nationwide utility that operates that, but they're also looking at water resource issues, and so we're continuing to communicate with them. So those will be the two that may come up in this next year. The 2025 legislative session, that's ramping up, and so that'll take a lot of our time. We've done process improvements in customer service to try to get ahead of folks who are behind on their payment or might not make the payment to try to avoid any shutoffs, get their bills paid on time. With the Mountain Rouge Water Treatment Plant and Aquifer Storage and Recovery, that plant's critical to providing water in the wintertime to folks in that area, and then also recharging wells so that when drought comes, we'll be ready for it. I'll continue a lot of work on succession planning. We're talking about emerging leader program, more job shadowing, tours, and just truly educating the younger, less experienced staff to be able to be empowered and have the tools to lead in their role and in their area and just continue to grow. American Flat, that's Danny Rotter and his team and John Alo and a lot of others. That's a huge lift, and that will continue to progress as this year goes forward. Upstream watershed protection with Nate Allen and Cara Steeland. Again, that's a huge endeavor, lots of different agencies involved, but very important to protecting our upper watershed. And then the water resource plan. And with that, I'll close it out. Like I said, I know we're short for time. But if you have any other specific objectives you want to add, we can do that now. And as you know, throughout this process, if issues come up during the year, we're always going to tackle them, even if they're not specifically laid out in the plan, because these are very general goals.
Well, let me just start and then we'll go around the table. You may have skipped over it quickly, but the APWA, the Advanced Purified Water, could you go over that one again?
Sure. Yep, American Flat, so it's in number 11.
Right.
So that's just continuing to go through the design phase. We can turn it over to Danny Rotter to kind of give a quick update if the board prefers.
Yeah.
But that'll just be continuing to see that project to fruition, and sometime next year, coming back to the board for the following year with approval to go ahead and construct that project.
Yeah. So you were in the room, although most of the other people were not, when we talked about this at the Regional Water Planning Commission. And excuse me, they're speaking about maybe being operational in 5 or 6 years. So what do you think this year will be focused on? Because I know they're talking about preparation for construction.
Yeah, I think this year is still moving forward with design, getting the operating agreement. That's another specific goal in the TMWA organizational goals, getting an operating agreement with the city of Reno, but getting everything, all the questions answered, the financial aspects answered, so we can come back to the city of Reno and the TMWA board and ask for approval to go forward with construction. Construction, again, I'm getting beyond my skis here, so I'll turn it over to Danny, but a couple of years of construction, and then beyond 3 years.
That's what we heard.
A couple is 3 years. And then beyond that, it'll take longer to actually become operational, so that's the 5 to 6 years beyond that.
And then the water plan, we spent a lot of time on the strategic planning on that. And that's the big difference. And I know you've got special staff working on that. We heard from them. Any more updates on that, or how you see that laying out over this year?
Yeah, so I think early springtime, we'll bring back a draft of the plan, just like we did last time, get the board's input, then go out and get public comment before we bring it back in the fall with a final plan for board approval.
Okay. And my last question on this was, and I'm not sure that you actually addressed this one, which has to do with PFAS. And we talked about regional water planning having potentially to look at, we've directed Kim to reach out to the partners to talk about possibly better coordination of water quality data. So potentially there's a one-stop shop. We didn't go so far as to tell her to set that up, but we asked her to explore it. So I'd love for you to add that. Just you guys collect a tremendous amount of data, but so do other agencies, whether it's DEP or folks over in sewer, folks over in stormwater. And I just want to make sure that as we collect all that information, which is all designed for individual agency consumption and use and propagation, that we don't have conflicting data, and especially PFAS gonna be sort of a hot topic over the next 5 years. And I wanna make sure we're speaking with one voice, so I would just ask you to also reach out to Kim or your proper staff to do that and talk about are there ways we can improve information. Even if it's with Truckee Meadows Regional Planning, they have, various GIS directed websites that are really good one-stop shops for information. Maybe it's just a pointer that sends our information from TMWA over there, so it's more transparent.
Yeah.
So just looking into it.
Yep, after that Western Regional water meeting, I reached out to Kim, and so we're gonna talk, I think, based on her timeline and that, maybe in the new year,
Yeah.
just talking about PFAS. TMWA has a dedicated page to PFAS as it
Right.
pertains to drinking water. But yeah, like you said, just making sure we all have the same message as we're talking and answering questions.
Right,
from
and
the-
one group isn't saying the sky's falling, other groups saying, no, it's just great, there's no problem whatsoever. That kind of thing, and yes, Mr. Dare.
Yeah, only thing that I'd like to see us consider, and I say this because county, cities are about to hit some budgeting things. And so we're gonna have fee increases, we're gonna have to survive the next couple of years in some strange ways. And I think you know this, but if you don't, it's gonna get interesting for all of us for a little bit until Nevada or something shifts. I'm concerned about us continuing to have increases here as another increase upon those who are fixed income, and name it. Obviously, we have to stay home, people need water, water's gold, we can't mess with that. But just anything we can do while functioning well. Obviously, water has to function well, but that would be one somewhat goal is to make sure we're paying attention to what our regional is going through and the increases that people will see. It's coming, and so just a concern I have.
Yeah, that's one that the management team talked about a lot, is the process improvements. And with succession planning, you have folks who have been here for a long time, who just grew up within their department, and in replacing them, we found sometimes it takes 2 people. And so we've had a lot of growth in headcount. Our system's getting more and more spread out, and so that increases costs, but we're constantly looking at, instead of just adding headcount, is there a process improvement that's more efficient that will help us, again, keep costs down as much as possible. There's a specific goal about making sure costs, our customer rates are minimal as possible.
And I know increases, this has been something we've all talked about over the years, so it's not a new conversation, but it'd be nice to not have one of these increases if we didn't have to. And we've done that before, but that was out of COVID emergency. But I know we worked that into our thing normally, we just count on these increases. But I would love to see us not have an increase one of these times, if it was at all possible, so.
I think we
Again,
would too, so.
obviously, we have to function well, we have to have water, everyone understands that, but if we could be a part of the answer, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anyone else? This is on the objectives, Mr. Anderson.
Actually, and you kind of touch on it in parts in here, so maybe this is already being done. But it's specific to grants and the process that we're going through, trying to get different grants for different projects. So not just TMWA focusing on ones that are solely for TMWA, but coordination even with county, with City of Reno, City of Sparks. Is that currently being done now when you're looking at grants that are available?
Not formally the coordination, but for instance, like the Bureau of Reclamation grant for American Flat, that was a grant that we worked towards that benefited, our partner in City of Reno on that. And so any project where we're looking for grants, we obviously work with our partners, but I think we can add that to just our realm of what we're looking at when we're looking at grants. The only caveat with grants is they come with a lot of strings attached, is what we found, so that's always difficult, but no, it's a good point.
And it's because of the American Flat project that it's like, that was so successful. Can we maybe be looking at it in other areas? So maybe it's not as big, but a significant improvement that we can make in our community.
Yeah, and we've made a big push with our federal lobbyists to look at any federal funding possible for all of our projects. So we're trying to get them more involved in the projects we're doing, hydropower, any funding mechanisms there that would help out and just save our rates.
All right, Ms. Angela, you got anything? Okay,
Great job.
yeah. So let's see if we need to take formal action. I think we do.
Yes.
on 8. So we got some additional goals to add in, related to grants and monetary efficiency on rates, and then coordination on, it's not just PFAS, I wanna be clear, it's water quality data generally. But PFAS is sort of a high profile one. If you could add those, and with that, can I get a motion to approve the objectives for the coming year?
Moved.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. Dare, second from Mr. Anderson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. And we'll go to water supply update. Bill Hawk.
It's raining, baby.
Who literally was hiding in the back row, ducking.
Should have been standing up.
Did I skip something?
Front and center.
All right.
Well, I'll just be mindful that in about an hour, we'll lose our quorum, so we're gonna try to strive to get through all our action items.
I will be brief,
Okay,
so.
well, that wasn't a note, just generally the rest of the meeting.
Bill out for the record that I do have a brief water supply update for you, outlook for this winter. So everybody knows that last year was our second above average snowpack year in a row. It ended up being 114% of median. And the runoff from last year helped to fill all of our upstream reservoirs. Lake Tahoe actually filled for the first time since 2019. And so we're in really good shape as far as storage right now. We're gonna go into this winter with about as much carryover storage as possible. The system wide is about 71% capacity right now. Tahoe is in really good shape, and as Tahoe goes, so do river flows. You can see the orange color, that is TMWA water within each of the reservoirs. And right now, between what we have in Donner and Independence and water stored under TROA, we have about 38,000 acre feet stored upstream. That's about 5% of the total. So really good shape. Lake Tahoe will continue to drop the next month or so until the winter rains start coming. So it'll be about 2 feet below max capacity. You can see that in this hydrograph, it's projected in green. But depending on what happens this winter, anything's still on the table. But the best guess, based on 43 years of hydrology, the most likely probabilistic elevation for Tahoe peaking out next year is about a half a foot below the rim. So unless we get really dry, have a less than average winter, Tahoe should be in really good shape again next year. There's also an outside chance we'll fill again next year.
So we're hoping for the black line.
The black line, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, the black line is the most likely 50% chance of that occurring.
Have they spoken about projected conditions for next year?
Well,
Is that a future?
yeah, I was gonna get to that on my last
Go ahead.
slide. So with a full Lake Tahoe, 70% of capacity, we're set as far as river flows are concerned for the next year. The green line shows you projection through 2025. And that means the required rate of flow at the California Nevada state line will be met even in the driest case. Even if we have a really dry winter, 80% plus chance that normal river flows will be.
And they don't pump, right? Like should it fall below and the lake fall below and we can't make the fluorescent rates, they don't pump out, do they?
But there are provisions in TROA that go through that, describe that process. It is possible. Oh boy, I don't know if I want to be around if
If that
we ever
happens,
get to that point.
we're actually lowering the lake to make fluorescent rates.
But, best case or worst case, we're not gonna be there next summer, worst case. Potentially, if it were 2 dry summers in a row, but there's a possibility that we could lose fluorescent rates in 2026. So,
Okay,
but right now, our water supply is set for the next 14 months for sure, and well into 2026, probably. Fluorescent rates have never dropped out prior to June, so we're set until June of 2026, worst case. So again, TMWA's upstream storage, we have about 38,000 acre feet stored up there right now between Donner and Independence, and water we have stored in Boca and Stampede and Troa. That's going to be drawn down to wintertime flood control
elevations over the next couple of months. Will help out hydro a little bit with that. But that storage will bounce back up in the spring, so probably in better shape than it was. So it's been abnormally dry out there. I think the last time I talked to you guys, California and Nevada was completely colorless. It's been a rather hot, dry summer. So we are, according to the US Drought Monitor, abnormally dry right now. Southeast Nevada is actually now coming into the severe drought status. So they are in need of some rainfall. And are we going to get it? I don't know. Climate Prediction Center has us in what's called watch status right now, La Nina watch. So what a La Nina is a cooling of the equatorial Pacific temperatures on the eastern side. And so typically what a La Nina means conventionally is a wet Pacific Northwest and a dry Southwest. Conversely, an El Nino means a wet California, Southern California, LA, wet Southwest, dry Pacific Northwest. But I'll tell you, we've been doing this a long time, and there is no really good correlation between this index and severe snowpack and mountains. La Nina, El Nino neutral. Just roll your dice, break out your farmer's almanac. I couldn't tell you what to expect this winter. There's nobody who can.
We're right at the center of that protection. So
Right.
depending where it goes.
Well, we're center and we're inland, and so what affects Washington and Southern California,
Exactly.
how it filters over the Sierras and to Nevada is,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, and CPC is even saying with this weak and short duration La Nina that they don't even know what to expect in the areas that are normally affected with La Nina. So it's up in there. So that's about as good as I can tell you. All I can tell you is we will have normal flows out of Tahoe for the next year and a half, maybe 2 years, regardless of that. So we're in really good shape. That's it.
oh, that's it.
Short and brief.
I have a question for you, and also for you, Dawn, and the water planning effort. So I serve on another board, it's the Mackey School of Mines, part of UNR. It's not called that anymore, but just for reference. We have a new state climatologist. His name is Baker Perry. And he came and presented to the School of Mines because the state climatologist is part of the geography department, which is part of the School of Mines. And the talk was amazing. This guy sort of blows it out of the water in terms of his experiences. He grew up living at very high altitude. I think it was near the Andes. He has been putting in climate stations around the world at some of the highest places in the world, climbing. He gave a presentation on those exploits, 2 specials he participated in. I think it was called Exploring Expedition Everest and Expedition, I think it was Africa. But anyway, they're both on TV now, documentaries, and he's now a resource to us. And I think he is planning to work with the SNOTEL group, which, we have the water, what the density of water in our snow calculated by NRCS and used by you making these predictions. But I didn't know if you'd have a chance to meet him yet, or if you could put that on your to-do list. I think he could become a good resource for us. Also on the water planning side, the state climatologist, in terms of looking at our future water supplies and those kind of things, could be it just brings a kind of a fresh face, fresh voice to this whole challenge. He has been going back and forth to where Hurricane Helene hit, and he is been helping with relief. He's also a volunteer firefighter, emergency responder as well. So he's a mountain climber, emergency responder, but his field is this. And so I just wanted to make that resource available, make sure you knew about him. I could give you the contact after meeting, and we'll go from there, see if he can help us in some predictions as well. Mr. Dale?
No.
Oh, you didn't have anything? Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Comments, questions on this?
Thank you for
Thank you, great news.
I think
Lots of snow,
tomorrow's
lots of snow.
first day of fall, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
officially, yeah. All right, so no action on that item. We'll go to 10, which is the customer satisfaction study for 2024.
Good morning, for the record, Sharpen Tier, Franklin Meadows Water Authority. Yesterday was a big day for customer satisfaction data nerds. We launched our first survey sort of under TMWA's control.
I was gonna ask, yeah.
Yeah, in looking at these results, I think transition is the big word, because, can we go to the next slide, please, Sonia?
He has it right there.
Oh, clicker works, it's been working for it. There, thank you.
And the pointer works too.
Okay, let's go to the next one. So, looking over the last couple of years, we've gone from telephone surveys. Back in those days, we were up in the 90th percentile year over year. That was great, it felt great, but we always sort of never knew. We never knew, okay, what does that mean? I mean, there were a lot of metrics. Then our vendor InfoSearch, sorry, we have a lot of infos. But anyway, InfoSearch transitioned to an online survey.
Right.
So then we're in the 80th percentile, which
In terms of responding.
in terms of response, in terms of
Okay.
overall customer satisfaction. To me, I felt pretty good about this, and I think there's a lot of reasons to feel good about it, because now we have a deeper look at the data. All of a sudden, we kind of look at how our customers in different parts of the city are responding in. But InfoSearch, they were kind of coming up the learning curve on it, and during that process, we decided, listen, we're going to take this in-house. So what you're seeing here is the final iteration of the InfoSearch instance. But what we're moving towards is us doing it internally. And the beauty of that is, as we move forward, we will be able to get better and better at looking at, we look at customer sentiment, and throughout the survey, you'll see different issues that we talk to people about. How do you feel about the quality of the water? How do you feel about water availability? What are your biggest concerns? But what we'll be able to start to see now is, how do people in different parts of the city feel about these issues?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll create an opportunity for us to be a little more granular in the way we communicate. So we're pretty excited about this. And it's not gonna happen overnight. We really need to learn how to suss through these numbers and determine an effective way to communicate. So extremely satisfied, 47% from 54%. Again, my read on the overall number, 81% versus 84% the previous year, could be margin of error. Could be, it's kind of a cranky year. It's an election year. We have all the anxiety about inflation. So reading the tea leaves a little bit on that. This slide shows you how we rank versus other utilities. And just to sort of make the point that we're still very strong versus our peers. Here we just get into, essentially with the format of this survey is a 5-point scale, so people sort of rank us on each one of these questions. A little bit of a drop off in each one of these. And again, reading the tea leaves a little bit, my take is, again, kind of a cranky year, maybe reading margin of error. This is one of those things, as we use the tool longer and longer, we're gonna have a better understanding of how these numbers move back and forth. This slide shows you so people were asked to rank these 5 categories and what they were most concerned about. So maintain high quality of my drinking water. That makes complete sense. That would be everybody's first concern. Keeping water affordable, again, and this sort of, to my mind, validates my gut that it's, right now people are concerned about prices. So that, but it's not too far above, having sufficient water supply, which is always a concern for our customers. Number 4, meets the needs of our growing population. And then managing the effects of climate change. So again, there were no other categories for the rank. It was just a tool where they dragged these to the position that they thought was most appropriate. So the reason we included this slide, so it just shows, of the people who are extremely satisfied, 27% offered a comment. And then going all the way down, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied. And what it demonstrates is that, just the rule of thumb that people who are dissatisfied do tend to comment more. And the reason I think it's important to see this, it contextualizes the word packet contains pages and pages of customer comments. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great. But it helps you understand that if a high percentage of them seem negative, this is why. So,
What is why?
The fact that people who are dissatisfied are more likely to comment.
Well, it seems like you put extremely satisfied, maybe I'm reading this wrong.
It's extremely dissatisfied, 63% respond, dissatisfied, 71%. We're on the other end of the scale, extremely satisfied, 27% respond. So it just indicates a propensity to respond based on your satisfaction. And then how are we gonna use this data? You know, as I mentioned earlier, the great thing about the Qualtrics tool is that, you know, it'll allow us to really examine how we're interacting with our customers, how they're responding to their various concerns, and then how we can reach out to them on an individual level. The implementation of the Qualtrics, I just want to say very quickly, and I know we're pressed for time, was a big lift, but I do think it's important to thank Thomas Staff, Peter Kelly from MIS, and Chris Machieski as well. Derek Clayton from IT also, it was a huge lift, contributed, and of course, Camila Ray, who's really led the charge on this implementation for good standing. She's been awesome and is going to continue to help us with that. Any questions?
I have a quick question, which is, so bringing it in-house, but you did do phone versus online, or did you do online?
It's all online now.
Okay,
It's very.
so it was apples to apples in terms of being online last year and online this
Yes,
year, right?
it was. So there was a drop off. So yes, your question, the answer is yes.
Okay, so the drop off is not by how we were asking the question online versus orally on a phone call. It was something significant. I mean, it was measured. We just don't know if it's a trend or if it's due to the factors you mentioned, political, election year, cranky people, inflation. So they're gonna be sort of concerned about lots of things and more price sensitive, is what you're speculating.
This is speculation, and I think the longer we use this tool, the less we're speculating. The more
Okay,
data we're gonna have, the more informed our.
and one more thing, the
interpretation.
response level, could you go over that again? It sounded like it had increased. Right, you said on an earlier slide that we had a higher level of response, I thought. Right here. 2,000 versus 1,400.
This is actually, Cammy, what did the number change from 20?
It's just a different size of
well,
population at the beginning.
Do you want me to tell us?
Yeah.
The percentage is the same.
I just wanna make sure I
Technically,
understand.
right, we actually heard from more people, because of the percentage here, you're right. It is more people.
I think we just had more respondents, yes.
Yeah, Cammy Lorraine, with good standing for the record. The key difference between fiscal year 2023 and 2024 is that 2023, that email instrument was actually owned by InfoSearch. We switched to Qualtrics in 2024.
Right, which
And
is like an
it's
app
more
where you buy.
advanced, yeah, I think that they have a better algorithm in releasing the survey so they don't bounce back. So what you're seeing there, I believe is just a cleaner instrument that Qualtrics offers.
Okay, but we did have significantly higher response.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that we
that's
grew
correct.
this much. I
That
mean,
is
we-
correct, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, so the tool is maybe targeting respondents in a better way to get it in front of them so they can respond.
Yeah, it's making sure that the technology just doesn't get bounced back through different email servers.
Sure.
Smart.
Okay,
Yeah.
questions, Mr. Dare?
I think one of the things, and you hit it on, but and this goes back to a comment I made before, almost every utility jumps. And so cost of everything, and I don't know about you, but when something costs too much, I'm grumpy about everything else anyway. So we're definitely in it strangely, when eggs cost this and things cost that, I think it becomes a big reality. And so it's something that as we march forward, and then the other thing, the education piece that Sandra mentioned is people don't understand. I mean, there are tons of people who think we don't have water and they think we should manage it better, but they don't understand. So we have to continue to find ways to put that message out there. But I really think financially is our key point. If I had to, from what I could read to you. So.
Any other comment, Mr. Anderson?
Actually, a question, on the one slide where we did the comparison, industry benchmark. So I was just curious, are those all of the mid-size West Region water utilities? That's all of them that are being, tracked?
It's the top of the list.
Okay,
What
so.
does top mean though, size wise? I mean, to his question.
Yeah, how many people?
In total, there were 17 different mid-range utility companies on this list. The segment average is included in there, 526. What that number actually means, it's an aggregate, it's not a satisfaction score per se, it's not an answer to a satisfaction score. It's factors and attributes that they apply a calculation to, so that's how they get to this number. And so, yeah, there's, there's plenty beneath that segment average, there just wasn't enough space on the slide.
Okay, no, and that's what I was asking basically. So the one thing I want to point out is how awesome that is, that you're number 2. And so then I guess it shows that y'all aren't quite walking on water yet. You've got some room to grow. So next year, right? We'll see.
Nicely played.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna ask, are we actually second, or are there some others that you had 17, but you gave us like 6, 5? Are we actually number 2 of the 17?
Yeah, according to J.D. Powers, and this is completely,
And they rank different things than the customer satisfaction.
yeah, it's
right?
an aggregate, so it's
Of what?
so they have like 5 different driver questions, and each one of those driver questions, they have, another half dozen attributes that go to the delivery of those drivers that they say contributes to satisfaction. So it's J.D. Powers sort of, doing a little customization on what satisfaction means.
Okay, that's good to know. Sandrola, anything?
I just, thanks for including all of the comments. I'm not going to say I read every single, there were a few pages. But I don't know about you, but I think the importance of reading the dissatisfaction sometimes is equally important as the rest. And I think that there were some, I remember one distinct on the dissatisfaction that I thought was an interesting suggestion. You probably saw it, and we don't need to discuss it, I just wanted to point it out because it made a lot of sense in terms of if there is, and maybe you already do this, if there's some type of significant meter read in terms of usage, the person had a leak evidently, and I don't know what the mitigation factors or what the story is, but the suggestion was it was quite a bit of a waste of water. It was a really, for a dissatisfaction question, it was really well poised in saying you might want to consider putting some type of alert if there's a significant increase in terms of the utilization that could indicate a leak, therefore wasting water as that. And so I just wanted to point that out, that I thought for a dissatisfaction, sometimes the comments were poignant and robust. And I just wanted to say that I don't know if you use, if that system is already in place or something that can be considered, it might be too costly, but also the second is, as you are in this in-house, I think it'll also allow those trends to be looked at. Because if someone's extremely satisfied, again, I think that's as equally important on why they're extremely satisfied compared. So I'm a statistical person in terms of looking at all that, which is why I read all those comments. So it'll be interesting to see how it also compares to what you've done in the past when you bring it in-house. So I'm excited to see, will it be a year before we see that result of the in-house
We'll
survey
be
that
reporting
just
on
went
it
out?
at this meeting next year.
Okay.
And just very quickly, and Marcy's gonna have something to say about our leak alerts, but is one of the negative things about switching from a telephone survey to a digital survey is people tend to wield the club a little heavier than when they're talking to you on the phone.
100%.
Yeah, so, and that is doing, and I'm not rationalizing anything, but that is part of the reason we've seen a shift in the numbers.
Yeah, I asked Marcy Westland to talk about.
Okay.
Issues.
Okay. Well, that's why there's keyboard like cowboys. Easy for me to say. But it's easy when you're behind something to say something. But still, it's valid. I mean, it could be a valid point.
So we are now 76% done with our AMI meters, and that opens the opportunity for people to go online and see their daily usage, as well as set up a leak alert for whatever parameters you want. So that is, we are pushing it forward for our next newsletter that goes out to all of our customers, but it will explain how to do that, and we do have that today.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, really good info. Something you may wanna do, Mr. Carpenter, is in 5 years, you may want to look at an outside firm, like a validation process, inside, outside, and see if you're getting similar answers, but I don't say that for sure, but it's just another check.
No, it's always great to have that sort of set of eyes.
Right, okay, thank you,
Thank
great report. I'm gonna close out item 10, which we don't need to vote, and item 11, which we do, which has to do with Matt Bowman and our funding plan.
How's good news, bro?
Not bad. Okay, let's see. We got this new. Okay. Let's look at it here. Oh, it's not one of them.
The pointer's working.
That's it. That's okay. That's fine. That's why it's animation. Okay. Good morning, members of the board. Matt Bowman, TMWA CFO for the record. So this funding plan covers years 2025 through 2029. We are looking for board approval of the funding plan as presented. This was presented to the Standing Advisory Committee in October, and it was approved by the committee. This funding plan includes the next scheduled rate increase of 4% in May of 2025. So first, I want to cover our fiscal planning timeline. This slide should look familiar because I've presented it before. And this just kind of gives you an idea of fiscal planning for TMWA, how we go about it throughout the year. And kind of the takeaway here is that it doesn't stop. We continue to revisit this, reforecast, no less than twice a year, but really all the time. So in March, we bring the tentative budget CIP to the board for approval in April. It's approved by the SAC and then filed with the state of Nevada as required. In May, final budget CIP goes to the TMWA board and then filed with the state. And then here we are in October, we're looking at our funding plan, which is our 5-year forecast. And that's presented to the board and SAC. And included in there again is a 4% rate increase in May of 2025, as was previously expected and scheduled. So I want to hit the takeaways to start. So there's a couple of measures that we are always looking at and always talking about, key measures. And the first is debt service coverage, and that's that top section, that top table. And what debt service coverage is TMWA's net revenue as a percentage of debt service. And we have two measures that we look at. One is as required by bond covenants, and that's the first line. It's our senior lien debt service coverage. And so we have kind of two categories of debt. We have senior lien and then subordinate. And senior lien is about 95% of our debt, so it's most of it. But we have to be above 1.25 times. That's required by our covenants, and we need that in this funding plan in each of the years. The second measure is all-in debt service coverage. This is a board strategic goal. We meet this, but we have to use about $500,000 of rate stabilization fund. Last year, when we did this funding plan, we were actually projecting to need to use about $1 million of rate stabilization fund. So while we don't like to use it unless we have to, we are using a little bit here. It's a little bit of an improvement actually, a little bit where we thought it would be. So that's what, I don't know if it's good news, but maybe not bad news. Things have progressed pretty much as we expected. The other thing I want to point out here is last year around this time, we started looking at all-in debt service coverage for this goal versus senior lien debt service coverage. And part of that is because we've issued some subordinate debt since then. So I think it's more appropriate and more conservative to look at all-in debt service coverage versus just senior lien debt service coverage as part of the board's strategic goals. So it's a little bit more of a conservative measure. And so that's what we made that change last year, and I wanted to point that out.
I have a quick question. So our rating that we get, this, and so we're looking at our rating, that's part of why we went to the 1.5. I mean, we should make sure we have that rating to help overall cost. I would want to make sure that that's still necessary for that rating. And if it's not necessary for that rating, I'd like to know that we reach that rating. We obviously probably, I think we have one of the highest ratings for us that we have. So I don't want to just stack money in there and just sort of consider. So I just want to confirm that we still need those for that rating.
Yes, I think so. This is something that the rating agencies are gonna look at every time. I think
Just want,
it's very
just wanna make
important.
sure, because if we don't need it, I mean, there's no reason to have that savings in there.
Yeah.
For the-
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
The second section and what we wanna look at is minimum cash balances, so there's a financial management policy is approved by the board where we have to maintain a certain unrestricted cash balance. And in each year of this plan, we beat that balance. And that's also an improvement over a year ago when we presented the plan. We had 1 year and it was 2028, last year's plan where we dipped slightly below that minimum. We accepted it because we didn't want to ask for more rate increases to achieve that, but we're actually above it now each year. Another minor improvement to last year's plan. This is important to look at. So these are kind of upsides and downsides. So risks, opportunities, we could call it within this plan. The first, revenue sufficiency. So we talked about a funding gap, and each year that we presented a funding plan, there has existed a funding gap, and there still is, it persists. However, over the course of the plan, it is improving, but it's something that we're looking at. And what that is recurring revenues over really revenue requirement, which is operating expenses, debt service, and rate funding capital. So we want to aim for a recurring revenue to cover those items, and there is a gap. There always has been, but it's something that we are looking at. It's improving over time throughout the schedule, but I see it as a risk. Another risk I have listed, the second line, inflationary price increases. And so although we have seen inflation cool, specifically looking at electric power, we're keeping an eye on that because if NV Energy is in the middle of a rate case, and that could impact TMWA, although we don't know to what extent yet. We do have some inflation priced into the plan. I think there's enough. I think it's conservative enough to cover anything there, but again, the risk. And then just continued cost increases on construction. We've seen that, starting to see some stabilization there, but it's a risk. Yeah.
If I may ask you a question on that side of it, have you been tracking to see like connection fees, for example, to see how it's tracking in comparison to last year or previous year? And as a general, what are you seeing? What are you?
Kind of stable. And so we saw some big years in 20, 21, dropped off a bit in 22, 23 pretty stable, and 24 was almost identical to 23. So those connection fees have stabilized. That helps our cash balance, helps pay for the growth funded project of the CIP. And as I'm projecting those in here, pretty stable going forward.
So we really haven't seen a drop. It's pretty much just flat.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
But that leads into the third item, which is recession, and that's where we would see an impact. And so that's something we always want to be aware of, would impact our cash balances. Obviously, we would likely stop spending money on the growth funded capital at that point, but we wouldn't see those connections covered. Bottom section, this is the upside stuff. So grant funding. I've only included known and awarded grant funds, but we are, to your earlier point, Anderson, we are really shifting focus to pursuing grant funds. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and as Mr. Zimmerman mentioned, working with federal lobbyists, sort of just casting the net. Hey, here's our projects that we're working on. What might be available to fund these projects? And so I haven't added any additional grant funds in there, potentially some opportunities. And sometimes things happen quickly, and they like a DCNR, we got $9.5 million for AMI that we weren't expecting, got it, and we took advantage of it. So always look out for that. The second line is a little more certain. This is energy incentive funding for our Ortage hydro project. This is under the Section 48 tax credits. I've mentioned this in the past, but it's a refundable tax credit that I'm optimistic we'll receive. I didn't include it in the plan, maybe as superstition. It'll be a couple $1 million likely. So it's a huge amount, but it helps. And so I wanted to call that out. We likely receive that a year from now or so. And that's related to the Ortage hydro project. Debt refunding. This our 2025 and 2026 series bonds will have the opportunity to be refunded the 2015 and 2016 bonds will have the opportunity to be refunded in 2025 and 2026. If interest rates are such that it makes sense, that's something we would pursue, lower our debt service, restructure. We're always looking at that. Obviously, we did our cash optimization in fiscal 24. This would be a more traditional refunding should the opportunity arise. The larger outstanding balance is the 2016 bonds, so it might make sense to wait until 2026 to do a larger refunding of both. And then lastly, we are in the process of working on cost of service and rate design. So I've talked about this, expected to be completed end of fiscal year 2025. We started to make some really good progress on it. The goal of this is not to increase or decrease revenue, but really just look at the allocation of the revenue that's coming in and making sure that we're receiving revenue through our rates from the appropriate classes based on how much it costs to actually serve that customer class. So you're talking commercial, residential, irrigation. We want to make sure that those are appropriate, looking at rate structures. One of the things that is on the table for this is the existing Washoe County rate structure and merging that in with one. We have less than 20,000 service connections there, but we would like to get those rates onto one Tumwa.
Sorry, is that the one that we saw a pretty good jump? I remember something coming in front of us quite a few years ago, had a pretty good jump on apartments, I think. And I remember, is that the same idea that you'll go through and that one had a big percentage increase?
I'm not familiar with.
Have we done this
It was-
recently?
It was comparing
Like the
multifamily.
last 5 years?
Not.
When the last time we
That
did
was the
this?
fees.
It was on the fees.
Oh, okay.
Area fees and such.
Might have been area, that's what I'm talking.
We have not done this since the merger with Washoe County.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll move on, we'll get into the numbers. Apologize for the size of this slide. This just gives you everything, but I want to point out a few things here. Here's my circle. So this is the funding gap that I talked about. So you can see it's a nominal improvement year over year, but it does persist and it's something that we have to be aware of. All in debt service coverage, so you can see we're a point below 1.5 times. That's where that $500,000 use of rate stabilization fund comes into play and gets us to that 1.5 times. And that's actually an improvement over last year's funding plan, but still kind of that bare minimum. We don't want to go much lower than that. The last line here is minimum cash balances, and this is unrestricted cash. And the lowest we get is $1.5 million to our threshold, which is close. However, last year we were projecting to be slightly below, so a slight improvement there as well. And we'll dive in a little bit more to some detail. So recurring revenue. So this is what's coming in. We've got water sales, the largest of that, hydroelectric sales, other operating sales, and we include investment income here as well. The chart, the graph there, the blue and the green, the blue is the prior funding plan, green is current. Slightly lower this year, a little bit more conservative on our water sales projections, but it's really not significant. About $1 million a year is the difference from last year's funding plan. And included in these projections is the 4.5% rate increase that we had in May of 2024, 4% in 2025, 3.5% in 2026. And then we're also including an increase in services or additional services of about 1.5% each year, which is what we've seen and what we're projecting for growth. Revenue requirement. This is money going out. So this is what we have to pay for. And this is first looking at the difference between the prior funding plan and the current funding plan. Blue is prior, green is current. So you can see here it's a little more than it was last year. What's going on here is we have about $2.5 million more revenue requirement than we did the year before. There's some savings and some costs. We do have additional personnel costs of about $2.7 million and additional capital spending. we've been able to progress capital projects quicker and more efficiently than we have in the past, so we've been spending more money. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's something that we've talked about in the past. We have a CIP, we often are well short of what we've set out to do. We're starting to narrow that gap a little bit. We're getting a lot of projects done, engineering teams working really hard. Personnel costs, we've added positions, strategic areas, that's, as we've talked about already today, that's something that we don't take lightly. We just met even yesterday as a management group to take a look at our headcount projections, ensure that we're adding positions in the right areas, and being very intentional about what we're adding. On the savings side, I actually have a decrease in services and supplies, and part of that is sort of that cooling of inflation. I think a little more conservative last year than what we might see in inflation, so we're dropping that a little bit. And then debt service, almost $1 million of savings there. That's a result of the cash optimization refunding that we had last year. And this kind of gives you a broader picture of what makes up, so we've talked about capital, employee costs, services and supplies, and debt service. And this is the breakout of what makes up that revenue requirement. So you can see employee costs, about 32%, services and supplies, 26%, debt service, 19%, capital, 23%. So that wraps it up. That's pretty high level. I definitely want to thank my staff for putting in time to put this together, and then the entire TMWA team, because everybody provides input to putting this plan together. We have multiple iterations. The financial planning never stops. We're going to start working on the budget here right away.
Okay. Well, Matt, thank you so much. And in the interest of time, unless there's a pressing question on this, I think we have a good financial basis on which to move forward. Let me just ask, I know we have several agenda items to cover still. Are there any pressing questions from our board? No. Thank you so much. As always, excellent presentation. Really have a good feeling for where we are. Thank you. Okay. I don't think we
We
are looking for action here. So what is the recommended motion?
Approve the funding plan as presented.
Okay. So can I get a motion to that?
I'll move to approve the funding plan as presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion from Ms. Andriola, second from Mr. Anderson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thanks, good job.
Okay. We're going to move on to 12 and 13, both of which deal with one is the past, how we were doing, and we got a really good feeling for that for what you presented before, and what are the upcoming goals. So start with number 12.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll just walk through these in the interest of time. We'll just hit the ones that we didn't hit or the red,
The
yellow.
exceptions.
Yep, we'll hit a couple of the greens. I'll call staff up, or staff will come up and explain a few of these as we go through them. So this first page, I think Mr. Water, if you want to talk a little bit about just the efficiency benchmark.
Yeah, so these two under efficiency are AWWA benchmarks that we compare ourselves across the country to water-only utilities. And so we're always hitting the green on that average MGD delivered per employee. This top one is yellow because we're right at that, almost to the top quartile. It's bounced between green and yellow over the last couple of years, but it's something we continue to look at. We also kind of compare and say, okay, well, if we compared it to Phoenix, how complicated is their system? They have 100 wells like we do, but they don't have 5 treatment plants and 350 pressure regulating stations. So we've always tried to put that context in there and say, what are we doing? How can we do better? But also keep that context in mind.
Thanks, David. Jessica, safety.
I just wanted to touch on the safety, the collisions per million miles. You can see we did not, just barely missed our mark, but we didn't make it. We use a benchmark called the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety. We'll talk more in the next group of goals about changing that, but marking to them, we didn't make it. I do think it's important to note that the difference between FY23 and FY24, we actually drove 94,000 more miles this fiscal year than we did last year and have the same number of collisions. But what we're benchmarking against really isn't showing us really how we're performing internally. So we actually had a better collision rating internally this year than we did the prior year. So just wanted to point that out.
And if I may just ask a quick
Yeah,
question
please.
on this one, and I know I've brought this up in the past, but what type of training are we going through with any employee that potentially will be driving?
So all of our new employees, when they're onboarded, they go through distracted driving, weather driving, they watch driving videos, they take driving tests, and then Dan, who's our safety guru, actually takes them out and goes on a drive with them and evaluates their driving, provides them feedback. We have policies around walk around. A few years ago, we had ping pong between green and red. We implemented the walk around. It helped tremendously. A lot of our stuff are really minor things. We have a lot of off public roadways that we access that creates, you know, additional collisions maybe above and beyond what a normal utility might face. So we're constantly monitoring and looking for ways that we can inform and educate. And I'll talk in the next agenda item about some things that might help us better benchmark against our actual performance.
What is a walk around?
So a walk around is before somebody gets in a TMWA vehicle and moves that vehicle, they walk 360 degrees all the way around their vehicle so that they're looking at anything that might be impeding their movement if they were to get in the vehicle, or other objects, that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Keep going. I think Matt talked about the debt ratio coverage, so we can probably go to the next page. On this one, natural resource goals. Nate, if you want to talk just a little bit about aquifer storage and recovery and the results this year and planning for next year.
Sure. I think as we discussed in the natural resource planning meeting, you know, we have been investing heavily in how we do aquifer storage and recovery. We have done some additional evaluations on what those goals look like, but for this past year, we've invested quite a bit and make sure we're maximizing on what those recharge levels look like.
And then just a quick note on Palomino Valley. So we brought a feasibility study report back to the board a few years ago. We've been continuing to talk with the owner of that property, talk with Reno Sparks, Washington County staff about potentially having using treated effluent irrigation line going out there and bringing back some water. We still haven't been able to find a structure that works for the owner. I think they are gonna put the property up for sale, that's what they told us. So it's still a concept that we're looking at internally. We tried really hard with Reno staff and Sparks staff to look from the effluent side, and the numbers just really never matched up. So we'll continue to look at it as a concept, bring back updates as necessary. Sorry. Yeah, this one. And so last year we had a preventative maintenance goal that was new. I think Mr. Dare brought it up as a goal for us to look at. And so I'll ask Bill Rainey to come up and just talk about the strategies, tactics we used this year, how we did it, kind of how we're adjusting to this going forward.
Thank you. Really for the preventive maintenance goals, we appreciate the board and the management team for giving us that additional headcount so we can make these site visits and get in front of things, issues before things pop up. And there's a wide ranging approach as to you have your preventive maintenance staff, you have your water supply specialists who are going out every week and they're looking at these sites, and then our mechanics who are certified go out there and do these sites, repairs and just get eyes on. As for the PM approach, we met the goal. I think we're gonna do better. We're gonna reformat the program a little bit as we bring more certified mechanics. It's a 3-year apprenticeship. It takes a little bit of time and to get people up to speed so that they're certified in the eyes of the state so they can do this preventive maintenance. I think we're gonna look a little bit closer at an operational preventative maintenance approach where we have different aspects that we look at. And I think we're gonna do even better. I think we're gonna, just like we did in Davis Fire, we wanna make sure everything worked great, but now we wanna make sure we do this all the time. Now we're gonna improve that program a little bit, take a deeper dive.
I think on the Davis Fire, it's a huge thing that we didn't lose pressure anywhere in our system. That's a credit to Bill and everybody on his team.
Staff did a great job, and so we're gonna get an even better jump on it next year as we get these people staffed up and certified and just more hands on deck.
Madam Chair, if I could ask.
Oh, please, Mr.
So I was just wondering what you're talking about, taking a little bit further beyond preventive maintenance. So you're talking about actually going into like predictive maintenance, where you're actually now anticipating life and the expectancy, things like that, or what do you mean by that?
Well, I think, especially Danny's been talking about a little bit of an asset management approach on our side, part of this Davis fire, getting in front of things seasonally. Right now, it's a deeper dive, like a well, for example. We want to make sure that SCADA and operational technologies, everything's talking right. You have a chemical approach where the chemical dosing systems are working, a mechanical eyes on, and then a SCADA for electrical reliability and stuff like that. So ideally, every year, we're already going out and doing these, but it's considered under one bullet point in our work order system. And we want to build that out to make it more tailored. That tanks, really, you're looking at electrical, mechanical, and SCADA, but there is no chemical aspect there. And so we're gonna tailor it so we get a deeper dive to say, all wells have these 4 points that we are visiting, all tanks have these. And we're trying to get away from that approach that you have Chalk Bluff, where's our main water treatment plant, counting as one work order or PM site when there are 1,000 different things to do there every year. So taking a more granular approach to make sure these specific tasks are done on a set schedule, and that's how we're gonna look to document.
And then Sean Feeney, our Director of Technology, will talk about the BIS goals.
Thank you. So obviously we have a little red there, that's the case.
You have the biggest red.
That's right. So, it's actually not a reflection, that metric is not a reflection of any inattentiveness of IT staff. It's more of a constraint of a legacy help desk ticketing system that we've had for going on 15 years now. It doesn't afford flexibility in how we address tickets. We only can have a ticket that's either open or closed, nothing in between. So when legitimate requests come in that are not simple, they're actually kind of complex, complicated, take some time to work through, that skews that kind of averaging number. So kind of looking to the future, what we're going to progress to and actually in this particular case have is we've kicked that old system to the curb. We brought in a new ticketing system that allows us that flexibility to build out an actual IT service catalog to offer to the company. So that's kind of one of the measures. And then the other one that we're shifting for is not to focus on ticket closure rate. We feel that puts too much stress on staff to try and just keep up that momentum to close things out. We want to focus on kind of the customer experience and engagement. So we're going to be shifting focus to continued customer response to those tickets that we have.
Well, let me ask, are you looking at addressing this legacy issue with the ticketing system?
Yes, and in fact, we have, because we've shifted over to an entirely new system that came online this summer.
Oh.
And presented it out to the organization, and it's live and in production as we speak.
Is it making any change since?
Oh, significantly, yeah.
You have seen a change in the last few months?
Oh, yeah, because we're now able to change ticketing status from, if it's with a user, it automatically kind of changes that status to with customer or on hold, so we don't have these kind of run-up times. We've also pushed for having the organization as a whole utilize more modern ticketing portal that's dynamic in the sense of how we can engage with our internal users.
Okay, interesting.
You wanted to talk HCM?
Yeah, I'll just touch on that first yellow there. I talked briefly about this at the last board meeting in my Q4 presentation for financials, but we began implementation of a new HCM system, which is HR payroll. We did a lot of work to begin that implementation, including our internal discovery, documentation of processes, shoring up data in the existing system to get ready for conversion, And then we ultimately said the software that we had selected wasn't gonna work for us, and so we paused that project. That's bad news, but the good news is a lot of that work that we did carries future value and it's actually staying on the books as a fixed asset to move forward to our next project. So that's upcoming. We're gonna keep working on it.
All right, three more. There are a few more yellows.
Yeah, I think we can hit the City Works portal, we were talking to Jason too, and how those are two.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to point out on this slide, we had some public comment earlier about our fleet.
Yeah.
Actually, to Member Anderson's comment, right here on goal 3, developing process and tools for GIS is TMWA's primary asset database. A lot of kudos to Ryan Dixon and the fleet group. Now they're populating work orders based on runtime. So it is towards that predictive maintenance, rather than just get an oil change every 6 months or whatever it is. It's actually dialing it in to be the most efficient. So good job to them. And, it's a green one up there.
And we're just focused on red and yellow.
Yeah. So next slide. So, yeah, keep going. Okay.
So those are quick counts. I think on this one, we're moving a bit. I think it was 11% last year, so going to 10%. So continue to try to improve that. Next slide. I think Matt hit this with his funding plan, talking about maintaining that lean operating ratio. So I think we can go to the engineering section side yet.
Yeah, some red and yellow. The yellow is in the commercial with the main category. We did not meet that last one. That was one project that got us to 97%, but otherwise meeting all of them. There's a table there that I know a lot of you get comments about our turnaround time. The average days is our average turnaround from first submittal to first red line. That's kind of the biggest area we can control. And so that's our average there. And then the red, the City Works Public Access Portal. This is a project to basically modernize what we did when COVID hit. When COVID hit, we started passing around OneDrive folders and put your plans in here and we'll snag them from there and you send me an email when you do that. And so we're trying to streamline that and optimize it and kind of true up that digital submittal. One of the things, the reason it was also in the BIS section is there's a kind of a cybersecurity improvement, network improvement that needs to happen before we have external facing stuff going on. And that also is tied to a grant fund. And so that's been delayed a little bit. So we did not meet that goal. In our next goals, we'll talk about trying to get that done as soon as we can come the new year.
Well, and this is like 25% complete. I mean, that's, right? Am I reading this right?
Yeah, it's
Number
kind of
4.
hard to say. I felt like we were behind, we gave ourselves a 25%, because I think we can do a lot better, so. But it really needs to have the network stuff done first, and then we can roll it out. And so it's kind of a 2-step thing, whether I was just harsh that day, but it's not bad.
Well, I have to compliment one thing is that a lot of times when agencies set their goals, they set them too low and everything's green. And what this tells me is that you guys have been quite realistic in terms of setting your goals and fairly measuring them. And even though you just said, well, is 25% the right number? All this does is give us it's not a good job and bad job. It gives us an indication of how things are going and where we need more attention. And for example, the improvements at IT, the improvements of the vehicles, in terms of maintenance. I mean, these are all things that need attention and nothing's perfect anywhere. And so I think you've actually done a very good job on both setting what needs attention and how are you actually doing it. It seems like a fair report to me. So good job from my perspective. Any other comments on this one?
Just, I want to say, I mean, yeah, I made the joke about us focused on the red and yellow, but really overall, I mean,
Right.
very, very good performance, so keep up the good work.
Yeah. There's lots of things beyond our control as well, in this day and age, whether it is money or ordering supplies or, just call it intellectual capital to solve a problem, So let me ask this, we need to take action on this as well, I believe.
The next one, so this
Yeah.
was just informational only.
Good. Now, on the next one, John and I were speaking, it is new. We are about to lose our quorum, it sounds like.
I have 15.
Oh, you do?
I do have 15.
Oh,
So
holding out on us.
we're close to, where I have to go, it's not.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hit that.
Yeah, I'm confident we can. I didn't think we could in 1 minute, but we got 15, I'm good with that. All right, so why don't we go on to number 13?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So first, in the customer satisfaction area, we took off one goal. The goal was basically about, read it so I don't mess it up. As far as tracking, all efforts and assistance with local agencies related to the homeless issue and water quality. We're still going to be doing, as much as we can, interacting with agencies on that issue. It's just at this point in time, we thought as a yearly goal, we didn't need it. Andy Gebhardt can speak to it more if you have any questions about it.
Okay.
And then Jessica on safety and the new metrics.
So we made a couple changes to safety to note. We've always tracked our recordable OSHA incident rates. It's just really half the story. It tells us that something happened. We've added a second measure that's related to that, and it's the days away restricted due to transfer time. That kind of gives us an indication of the severity of the incident. So that's an addition that you'll see in the next year's reports. And then the second big change is that we've used Bureau of Labor Statistics to benchmark against for our OSHA recordables, and then the network of employers for traffic safety for our collisions per million miles. And that really, those seem very arbitrary. Our operating environment is really unique here in the terrain that we're operating, the vastness, and really the diversity of the type of work that we do as a water utility. And so from that perspective, we really believe that it makes more sense for us to benchmark against ourselves. And so for the next year, we're looking at our average from 15 to current. And that's going to give us, we believe, a better picture of whether we have continuous performance improvement within our own safety program. We kind of saw that when I talked about we drove 94,000 miles more this year, had the same amount of collisions as we did the prior year, but when compared against the benchmark, it showed we didn't meet the target. So we believe by making that tweak, it's going to give you guys and us something that is more meaningful to benchmark against, and it's really going to be a measure of how our safety program is performing.
Jessica, comment on that. Could we do both? Just as it's a transition year, I would love to see both numbers, right? This new way of doing it, but also how does that relate to the national approach to it?
Absolutely.
Would that be okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
Mr.
and
Anderson?
yeah, to expand, I agree. Yes, I want to see how we're performing year to year, but to me, I really think, because if I remember correctly on like TRIR, you can actually compare like industry throughout the country and be able to say, this is your industry, this, water utility, whatever, and narrow it down. So we should be able to say, yes, we're comparable, kind of like what we saw in the one slide about, we're second best in customer service. Was it customer service was the one? I'm getting all blurred up here now, but I just think that it'd be important not only to see what we're doing as an agency and tracking that, but how are we comparing nationally to organizations like ours.
Perfect.
The next section, so this is for Nate Allen to talk about ASR.
On finance?
Sorry.
Oh, we're skipping finance.
Great, just to dig in a little deeper than my previous comments from this past year, aqua storage and recovery around recharge is still a significant priority area where we have invested a lot of analysis on it. And I wanted to walk you through specific numbers on where we're going forward, because overall, we are looking at a reduction in the amount of water that we are looking to recharge, although we're trying to optimize where that recharge is happening. And so just to walk you through those specific numbers so you're aware, looking at a basin by basin goal, we're looking at now recharging in the South Truckee Meadows, 1,200 acre feet a year, only 300 acre feet a year in the Central Truckee Meadows, 1,700 feet a year in Spanish Springs and 2,300 acre feet in Lemon Valley. Okay, and so that's basin by basin, what we think there's actual capacity for us to do from a geologic standpoint. We are gonna need to make investments going forward into making sure we can deliver on those numbers every year in terms of the operations of our wells and how we plan operations. Also on the horizon then, looking at, this projected time period with American Flat coming on, by 2030 or so, that will add an additional, sorry, I wanna make sure I'm getting all this straight, an additional 2,500 acre feet. So that will bring us to a goal, long-term goal that we're working towards of about 5,500 acre feet, which in the past, there's been higher numbers, and we've really seen because of that, because of those higher levels of groundwater recharge in the past, we've seen a lot of groundwater recovery. And so we're at a phase now where we're reducing the goal overall system-wide because of this conjunctive management we've been able to implement over the last few years. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Going forward, we still have our preventative maintenance in the operations section. We'll touched on that. And then probably go to technology services. So again, this is new department, Sean Feeney, the director, we'll go over a few of these goals. And talk about the new goal as well.
Thank you. Just some highlights for the goals, as mentioned from the 2024 results. We wanted to shift one of the goals about our ticketing system away from ticket closures to focus on ticketing response. That's how we can better engage with our internal customers by focusing on that kind of customer user experience, ensuring tickets are handled and being answered as they come in. We're not so much concerned about how long they take to close, as long as we're constantly communicating and engaging with our user base is what we think is more important to the organization.
Well, is there a new goal you've added here as compared to last year?
Yes, so that new goal is to focus on answering the initial ticket responses within 24 hours.
Okay.
So it was, sorry.
I imagine, that's internal, right?
Yes.
So I imagine like if you have a computer problem and you're in this agency, like you need it solved in the next 10 minutes just to keep things flowing.
Yep.
Not just have an acknowledgement in 24 hours, we've received your request for it, So I don't know, I'm sure you have a way of prioritizing these things that keep people working.
That's correct. We do have priorities in our tickets now.
Yeah.
So if it is like, my computer's burning down.
Exactly.
And the user kind of communicates that to our team, they're gonna jump on that right away, as opposed to, say, for example, I'd like a new mouse, and it's something that's not urgent, it's gonna take a few days to order that item.
Sure.
So that's kind of that now.
And do you guys keep sort of on hand like extra computers, extra
course.
mouse, all
Yep.
this stuff? Just, yeah, okay.
And there's one new goal on cybersecurity.
Yeah, so going back to what Danny noted about the PLL project and the need for the completion of that cybersecurity project, we felt it was significant enough to list it here. It's a big shift in how we do things and structure our networks internally to provide the most security we can by separating out digital devices between security zones and making sure that things that can talk should be talking through them and things that shouldn't be are of course denied. It touches virtually every staff facility that we have in terms of changing the architecture, changing the hardware. So it's a very big project internally. So, and one obviously that aligns to, I think, the organizational goal of making sure that we're protected from the bad guys on the outside. So wanted to highlight.
Okay.
The last page, Danny, in engineering has a few new goals.
Yeah, so back in June, we were here talking about kind of the development community and how trying to kind of solve some of these challenges. So paired with that PLL portal, we wanted to kind of unveil it with this submittal guidance document, kind of tips and tricks and most common red lines, so that as people are preparing plans, they're getting the best QA/QC and the best chance possible to get through there, as well as just trying to help learn and explain why do we do these things, why do we require these things. And so we've set those for January. I think to Chair Dewars, that's probably a challenging goal.
Right.
Where we're at right now. So sorry, staff, I don't know if I see Kershaw in here, but I set a high bar for us. I wanna get on that, I wanna get back to the development community and work through those things. It may not be hand in hand, we might have this network security thing lag a little more. We might just get out and have these kind of open houses or training type things go on. And then this last one, it seems fairly basic, but we want to complete a gap analysis across our asset management plans and identify 3 programmatic improvements. And so our staff is always looking at continuous improvement. We were talking about the fleet earlier of changing to those automated work orders based on drive time or drive mileage. And so we're just going to continue to look and say, where are 3 areas that we can get better as a whole? And so it's also a challenging goal with all the other things we have going on. But as you've seen, our staff rises to a challenge. And so we want to just make sure we're continuing that.
Well, really good. I've got 3 challenges for you that I actually wrote down that I didn't hear on the goals, but maybe they're too granular to be on these goals, but some of these are pretty specific, so I wanted to add some. One is, and maybe I missed it, we just didn't cover it, but an issue that's come up over this last year is pressure testing. We have customers that have older lines, but they're operating under very high pressures, which means breaks can occur or blowouts, or when you're changing over the meters and you turn it on suddenly, the pressure is high, and I know you and I have talked about it. Is it possible to add, some type of routine testing at, let's say, priority areas or older areas where we might look at that?
I guess what is the outcome that you're looking for?
So apparently there's ways to either down regulate the pressure to the range that you guys expect. And I'm one, I have very high pressure, but I have an oversight line. But mine hasn't been problematic, but I've heard of others, especially in Sparks and older areas of Reno that have older lines, so they're more susceptible to fail and yet very high pressures. And so I want to make sure we're operating our system within our design parameters, which I think is 60 pounds of PSI or 80, something in there. And I keep hearing about people that are over 100. So is that possible that we could take a look at it, even if it's just evaluate it and then set up a program in the following year? Maybe we don't have a problem, but I am hearing anecdotally we do.
I think in December, we were planning to come forward with a request that Member Breckis made last month, as far as just overall assessment of pressure in the system.
That's where I'm going, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just struggling on coming up with a specific goal other than
well, just like you do leak detection.
Leak detection and pressure are different though, because our pressure zones are set by significant infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so we can't really change that without large scale investments.
But there's maybe improvements customers can do at their own properties if they have the information. So just look at it. If you don't want to add it, this is the time to talk about these things. The second one was the generators, like you did excellent on, yeah.
I just wanted to, so we need an action on this item.
Yeah, I want to build, yeah, I have one thing to add.
Well, let me just get my third.
Okay.
The third was River Oaks example of consolidation. I didn't know if we had that on our list.
Yeah, it'll be in my GMs.
Okay. I mean, but as a goal for the coming year.
It'll just be continued with that bridge development, analyze that situation and see PUC and the private utility and community.
Okay. Well, it wasn't really just them. I guess I was asking, are there others? More as a overall goal, not River Oaks itself, but.
There are a lot of others, none that have come to us.
Okay.
Ask for information.
All right. Mr. Dick.
Yeah, sorry you had to run. But one thing we've talked about a little bit is our permitting process, and I know you hit on a little bit of it. I know I was just in another meeting from the health board side, I can tell you our contractors at large are getting friskier and friskier on this conversation on permitting. I'd like to potentially see that maybe we can guide, I don't know the right goal to put in place, but I can tell you, we're having more and more conversations, our mayors have more conversations, city councils, it's growing, it's not getting less. Someone didn't get thrown in there every once in a while, I appreciate what we've tried to do, but I would just say it needs to be on our thing. I have an idea to share. And part of me wonders if we can work together utility wise where they don't feel like they're stopping. It's a crazy idea that I have, but I just, from our standpoint, I just think it really needs to be a goal that we're trying to find the best ways to communicate.
It's on our to-do list and it's also part of our process improvement goal.
Thank you.
So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to take action on this, but I also want you to bring back this agenda item next time, because I would love to hear our missing members didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on the objectives. They weighed in on past performance, but I want to bring it back and we can more fully discuss the three. The one you just brought up and any others that other three members have. So I wouldn't mind voting on this set, but also leaving it open for further discussion.
Yeah, we can bring it back in December.
Okay.
I move to approve what was presented.
Yeah.
I think you've done a great job.
And
The
second,
safety.
Yeah, with all the changes.
yeah. Who's
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, so we motion from Mr. Dare, second from Ms. Andriola, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any, motion passed unanimously. I do want to take a final public comment, if you would just stay for just one moment. You want to bring the general manager report back next time since we're losing quorum?
We can do it really quickly.
Well, I don't know how long Mr. Dare can stand here, but
Quickly go.
Just quickly, so we had a great Independence Day lake cleanup, third annual one, working with the Nature Conservancy. Obviously, they own the land around the lake. That's good. Symbiotic relationship we have with them, so we want to continue to foster that. And then also, so next Independence Day, Mr. Andy Gephardt will be celebrating his independence from Tumwa.
oh, okay.
So we knew it was coming, but he's picked a date. Obviously, Andy's been the voice of Tumwa, but more importantly, the heart and soul of Tumwa for many years. Worked several different career ladders and worked his way up, all different avenues. He has immense pride in Tumwa employees, really cares about them, cares about our customers and customer service. And he's tried very hard the last 5 years to really impart that institutional knowledge to everyone that he works with. And so we'll have a retirement celebration when we pick the date and we'll let everybody know. And it's huge shoes to fill, literally. But we went through an interview process and we selected Ryan Dixon. Ryan's been in Andy's department as a manager for 2 years. He's been with the company since the Sierra Pacific days. He's worked in, he's an engineer. He worked in construction, field meter services, customer service. He's with Hydroelectric now. I'm sure I'm missing quite a few other roles that he's been involved in. But we're very confident in his abilities. In the interim, the communications side of what Andy does, which followed him in all of his different roles, will come under the general manager for the interim. And then lastly, we're also working on probably the most important succession plan for Andy, which is his barbecue skills. So last picnic, we took copious notes, so we'll try to replicate. And then lastly, I just want to thank staff and everybody for and the board for the input on the goals and my review, and then also outside help, which is Steph Morris is huge on our legal side. Leo Drozdoff, working with all things that touch or talk with the state of Nevada. And then Marcus Faust, our federal lobbyist, who helps us a ton with federal funding. So with that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And then we will turn our attention to final public comment. Do you have any?
I don't have any cards. Anybody online would like to speak? Please raise your hand. Nope.
Okay, and in the room, anyone?
Anyone?
All right, we'll close out public
You
comment.
gotta go.
You're still here for a year, right? Am I missing this?
July. So
Right.
Not about 8 months.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure we'll hear more from you, Andy. And then any final board comments, future agenda items?
Good job.
Thank you. Okay, and then we are adjourned. Thank you so much, very much.